You're listening to Questioning Your Sense, where you get real-world, pragmatic tax and financial advice for business owners, entrepreneurs, and independent contractors. Here are your hosts, Kevin Molen and Charles Steinmetz.
Hey everybody, welcome to Questioning Your Sense. I am your ever-present host, Kevin Molen, and here with me is my best friend, Charlie Steinmetz. Charlie, how you doing?
Hanging in there. How are you today?
Not too bad. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. You have anything you want to tell me about today?
Honestly, not today. I don't have anything pressing on my mind. Well, how about you? You always got something good. I know some recent stuff happened. I'm curious if that's what you're wanting to share today.
So actually, no, something a lot more mundane.
Oh, okay.
So I haven't had chocolate milk in a while, just because that's not necessarily like a big thing for me. I don't know. And so we actually made some last night, and I forgot how much I really like chocolate milk, so I enjoyed a nice glass of chocolate milk last night, which is cool.
Awesome.
Okay, well, let's jump in because we got a full docket today. Today we want to talk about some tax and financial planning tips, and so I think we're going to be a little all over the place, but mostly just about looking back historically, but also looking in the future and how maybe you want things to be different. So why don't you kick us off?
Wonderful. So in taxes and personal finances, sometimes it's really easy to identify like that moment of, I need to change something, right? So let's take a tax return, for example. Sometimes things happen. I mean, little changes add up, and all of a sudden a little bit more income, a little bit, change here. All of a sudden you have a refund of $1,500. That's now you owe $200, right? So, we all have things we want to change in our lives at certain points, but it's just that driving what's going to actually get you off the couch and doing it, right? So sometimes like I said, an easy example for me would be a tax return of what? Great. Well, we need to do this, and this so that can change.
Yeah. So talking about change, actually, I'm going to start soapbox right away, basically, today, because we are around that time of year where people are now thinking about their New Year's resolutions. And so I actually don't do New Year's resolutions. So from my perspective, if you want to change, if you're going to change,
right,
you don't pick an arbitrary time in the future to change. Because if you're going to change and you're committed to doing so, it happens right away, right? And so there's that. I read a Garfield comic when I was 9 years old. And it talks about when the most popular day to start a diet is.
Oh, sure.
Right? So the answer to that generally is Monday. But what's the second most popular day to start a diet? Tomorrow. Right? So it's this procrastination mentality of I'm going to change,
right,
but I'm going to change in the future. I'm not going to change now.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're going to change, that's something that you're going to do when you decide you want to actually change, and not some arbitrary date in the future. So I don't set New Year's resolutions, and I encourage my children not to set New Year's resolutions. But if we talk about them wanting to change something, then I say, okay, great, start now, right? What's stopping you from starting right now? It doesn't have to be a season. And if it just reminds you that there's something you want to change, then that's a positive for sure. But don't wait for an arbitrary date to actually change.
Sure.
So that's my soapbox. I'll probably have one or two more before we end. But I wanted to do something a little bit different and start that one right away this time.
Good.
Okay, so when we talk about looking forward and looking back, we talk about planning, we talk about potentially wanting to change something or get a different outcome from what you're experiencing, whether it be your taxes or whether it be your personal finances. One of the first things, and Charlie and I really are both just numbers guys, right? We're ruled a lot by logic. Math is really important. Extrapolating data extrapolating information from data is super valuable to people in our position. And so in this scenario, I think step number one is you got to know your numbers.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's really important of that piece is, being able to gauge that, being able to determine where you want, you have to have that. What is it that's going to change? And so looking at, your numbers, it could be bookkeeping. You're running a business and you need to know, okay, these last 3 quarters were this way, or these last 5 years were this way. And so any amount of planning or knowing where you are, having those numbers is going to be important. I mean, facts don't lie. There are many times I talk with people, and some discovery I've had the past few years of my life is what I perceive is that we boil decisions down to one of two things. It's either a mental and emotional decision, or it's a factual decision. Sometimes one will win over the other. I don't care about the facts. I'm going to do this thing anyway.
Right.
Well, then nothing's going to change.
This is what I want.
Doing. Right. This is what I want.
Nothing's going to deter me.
But there are those times where the facts will override how those emotions are. Man, I really want this thing. This is how much it costs. I don't want this thing anymore.
Right.
And so we can only live in this factual world. The quality of life, the emotional, the mental, those things are important factors in all of that. But it's something we can speak to. I can't educate or advise on those kinds of things.
Well, we can't quantify it.
Right.
We can't quantify it. No, so I'm actually glad you brought up that point, because one of the conversations that I have when speaking to my clients is that I can put a dollar figure to a lot of things, right? But I can't put a dollar figure to quality of life or peace of mind, right? So when people ask me a common question that I get, and I'm sure many of our listeners have wondered the same thing, should I pay off my house, right? Should I make extra payments on my mortgage? So that's a super common question that I get all the time. And what I tell people is mathematically, it depends on your amortization schedule, how much interest you're paying. Because from a mathematical standpoint, you can just look at the remaining payments on your mortgage and quantify how much interest you're going to pay over the life of your loan. And if you pay that off faster, we can quantify how much less in interest you're going to pay by paying it off faster. What I can't quantify is the peace of mind that comes from owning your home free and clear. Right? Lose your job, guess what? You've got the roof over your own head. You got to pay for utilities, you still got to pay for food, you got other expenses still, sure. But there is a real peace of mind that comes from having your home paid off, right? And so people ask me, Kevin, what should I do? And it's like, well, are you asking about the math? Because we have the data.
Because if I can save you $1,000 over 15 years, it's still mathematically correct to do that versus the other thing.
And by saying that, you mean don't pay off the house?
Not pay off the house. To let your money work for you, keep it in your 401 or whatever it is.
Invest it, right? Let the market grow.
Correct.
Things like that.
And so sometimes it comes to that and that's where those things play in well, if it's only $1,000 over 15 years, I'd rather have the quality of life. I can't advise you that way. I'm not going to recommend that thing necessarily. We can only give you this piece. And that really drives into the looking forward, looking back in taxes and personal finances and those pieces where we're going to come from is more of a math and logical standpoint. This is what makes most here. You then take that and compare it and add it to your emotional mental feeling of what feels the best. Having both sides of the coin is what's going to help you make the best decision. Right. You may choose to defy the math, but you knew that you were doing that versus hey, well, I had no idea. I wish I would have known that 15 years ago. Okay.
All right, Charlie, you're getting me into another soapbox here. Okay.
I'm sorry, everybody.
So we're going to soapbox again for a moment because what you're describing is the most common financial personal finance kind of issue that I see with everybody that I work with, almost everyone. There are a few exceptions, but a lot of people that I work with work within their finances reactively as opposed to proactively. So what happens is they just this is how much I bring in and I need to buy these things, right? And it's not a plan, it's not a look for the future, it's not setting a budget, it's just reactive. I need to buy this thing, I need to do this thing. They're not considering necessarily all of the ramifications of those decisions. So they're working within their finances reactively, and there comes a confidence in your finances when you operate in a proactive manner. And so short soapbox. Say that 3 times fast. But it really is something that I see a tremendous amount in people just operating reactively, as opposed to, like the question, can you afford this thing, right? Many people will look at it like, can I afford the minimum monthly payments?
Right.
Sure, then I can afford it. Well, it's not that simple, because what if something unexpected occurs, an unexpected expense that drains your savings, a new air conditioning unit, or your car gets totaled, or something like that, right, occurs? Then are you in a position where you can still afford it? Well, no, now I'd have to, have it repoed or give it back or whatever.
Right.
And so the question of can I afford it is not a question of can I make the minimum monthly payments.
Right.
The question of can I afford it is based on my financial plan over an extended period of time. Is this a durable plan, right? If I add this expense, which is a little harder to quantify, but anyways, that's my surprise. That's one of my surprise soapboxes.
Surprise soapbox.
Yep, indeed.
Gotcha. Well, coming to kind of get us back on top of what we're talking about, kind of knowing where step one in this whole thing is knowing where you are, knowing where you have been historically, knowing where you are really is the catalyst into doing anything else. So what's easiest for me to speak from is the tax return, people coming to that, the tax planning side of things. I have this rental property. I have this business. I'm going to start this business, those kinds of things. And it's just putting it down on paper. It's not dreaming it. It's not hypothetical. It's really, in any of this, probably that part is the part that's going to take the most effort, in my opinion.
As far as putting the numbers together?
Putting the numbers together. The most of your physical work is going to go together into researching, putting it out together. But I don't know much more I can speak on. Just, it's got to happen. You got to be able to put this stuff together. However it's organized, however you choose to put it together, doesn't necessarily matter. You can do it on paper, you can use electronic, but it's just got to happen. This is step one.
So
well, how much to expound on that?
No, I hear you. The thing is
salt. It's salt.
It feels like to people, at least one of the common concerns that I get, I'm sure you hear the same thing, is that it feels like a monumentous task, right?
Yeah.
That it's going to take a lot of work to do all of this. And what I tell people all the time is, how do you eat an elephant, right? Right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so it's one of those scenarios in which, and actually I have a surprising amount of clients who haven't heard that term before, which was always really surprising to me, because they give me this funny look and I'm like, wait, really? But I guess that's something my parents taught me growing up. But, you eat an elephant one bite at a time,
right,
because eventually you're going to be able to consume the whole thing. And so this is one of those things, right? People get scared of trying to put their numbers together. The reality is it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be in QuickBooks. It doesn't have to be, completely 100% accurate at all times. You are rewarded for whatever efforts you put into place in trying to know your numbers. So I'll give you an example. I am a tax and finance guy. And so when I go home after helping people with their taxes and finances all day, one of the last things I want to do when I get home is then work on my own finances, right? And so my wife does a great job in working through all of that within our household. But there come points when my expertise working in the financial world can help us personally. And so she and I meet regularly, right? Ideally weekly, but regularly. And all we do is we look at the last 7 days worth of bank account transactions, just to make sure that she and I are on the same page. Now, that doesn't mean I'm coming in here and filtering all of that into this ginormous Excel spreadsheet where I have absolutely everything perfectly budgeted. But we are rewarded for our efforts, right? Because both of us have a better feel for where we're at financially, because we are consistently reviewing the numbers. We know our numbers because we are putting in effort. It's not perfect and it's not the very best, but it also doesn't have to be in all cases, right? Now, when you got something unique or unusual going on, for example, when we bought our second home, when we sold our first home to buy our second home, we had to know our numbers really, really well. And so there was a lot more effort put into place, making sure that we could afford the house, making sure that it wasn't going to harm us financially and harm our financial future and all of that. And so a lot of people think that they've got to make all of the changes, and that's not what Charlie and I are proponents of. We don't necessarily recommend that you make all of the change. It's just like exercise and dieting and fitness. Not that we would know a heck of a lot about it, but it's one of those scenarios in which you're not, if you commit to make all of the changes all at once, you're going to burn out, right? Because you're not going to make the necessary changes. You have to take the smaller steps first. And that's all this is about, right? It's just intentionally act in ways that will help secure your financial future, right? Even if it's not all the right ways. Heck, even if some of them are wrong, you got to learn that through experience. And so don't just sit back in a reactive capacity when it comes to your finances.
So, and with business owners, whether you're self-employed, contract, owning a business, it happens often where taxes, bookkeeping, all those different pieces become this giant bear, this not fear, but great distaste for, because New Year's is the time where it's like, oh darn, I got to go through and spend a week and a half putting all this stuff together, and it's just this nightmare scenario that ends up just not being, not that it's necessarily ever fun, but it's that much more not fun. And so having that consistent done through, there are real world benefits that are gained throughout the year, more than just make sure to have it done so taxes is easier. No, there's a lot of other pieces. Some examples I'll give for like business owners is tracking and keeping up with those numbers, keeping consistent. One is good business practice, but then two is, say for example, there's things that you'll notice in your own industry, but let's say every October you have a dip in income. Okay, then either the months preceding is when you should ramp up some marketing, or October is the best time to take vacation. And if August you have your spike in income, never take vacation in August. And so there's things that those numbers in a vacuum themselves are still beneficial to people. And so it's more than just a looking back, how to plan, how to change. Just having them on a regular, consistent basis is still a beneficial thing that we see real world benefits for, depending on what application it's for, and it would work for different places.
So hopefully, we've convinced some people to know their numbers, right? At least to some extent, or make some strides to improve in knowing your numbers. The next piece after knowing your numbers in regards to taking historical data and trying to help that impact your success in the future. The next piece after knowing your numbers is really the kind of the planning stage, right? And so when it comes to planning in a business capacity and in a personal capacity, planning, let's cover planning after. First, let's talk about setting goals, right? Because the planning comes after setting goals, right? Naturally. And so
it's kind of like one right after the other, but yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about goals first though,
Sure.
Right? Let's cover goals first. So once you recognize and you know your numbers and you recognize that you really want something to be different, or you want to change, or something just needs to be different.
Retirement isn't enough. I want to grow my business. I don't want to owe this, or I want a bigger refund.
Yeah. So that hopefully is your catalyst. Hopefully you've got a moment there where you see something and you recognize that you want something or need something to be different. Right. You owe a couple of years in a row, and you come to Charlie and you say, Charlie, I'm sick and tired of owing. And Charlie says, all right, we've got some things that we can do to help fix this. And It's not called tax evasion. It's called, let's just bump up your withholding a little bit. You lose a little each check, but you pay more into the federal government. Come tax time, it's more evened out, right?
A little bit changes a lot over time.
So. Yep, absolutely. This next step then that we want to talk about is setting goals. So in regards to setting goals for your personal finance, so I'll speak to that a little bit if you want to talk on the tax angle.
Absolutely.
So my wife and I set a goal, right? When we were working on our finances, we set a goal because basically she wanted me to be able to use some of my expertise to help us be financially successful. And so we set a couple of goals. The very first goal that we set was to meet every single week in regards to our finances. That was the very first goal that we set. The other in a really important goal for us that we set, my wife and I love we love to eat. We like good food. We spend a little more in dining out than we probably ought to. And I always knew that we were probably a little on the higher end of dining out until I actually looked at the numbers. And then I saw how much we were spending each month dining out. And I realized that it was more than what it should be. And so we'll go into the numbers, but it was more than what we both thought was reasonable. And so we realized that was our catalyst of realizing that we wanted something to change. And it wasn't, it wasn't specifically harming our financials. It wasn't good, but it wasn't, putting us out of our home or anything like that. We just recognized that we could do a lot better than what we were doing. So we reviewed our numbers every single week, and then that was our first goal. And then our second goal was that I would bring lunch to work every single day, and that she would make dinner every single night except for one night a week. So we would dine out one night a week. Now, it's important in regards to setting that goal, that was something that we discussed, that we agreed upon, that we thought was a great plan. And we behaved really incredibly well for a long time in that goal. And then, as with any goal, it in and of itself, having the goal is valuable, even if you're not perfect in regards to following it. So she and I weren't perfect and aren't perfect in following that goal still, but she and I both still agree that that is ultimately where we want to be.
Sure.
And then just circumstances and facts and things that happen necessitate other changes.
Sure.
For example, we've got COVID-19 going on right now. My kids are at home doing Zoom school, which is particularly difficult. So my wife is really ensconced in helping them with school.
Sure.
And all of them are doing a great job, but it makes it very difficult for her to be able to take the stresses on of being their teacher.
And the parent.
And with the baby, right? I got a 19-month-old at home, and trying to make sure that we've got dinner. And so that makes it challenging. So we have recently not done such a great job, but she and I still talk about these are still our goals. And having that goal, even if you're not going to behave perfectly, will still help you make better decisions than having no goal at all.
Right. So before I jump into the tax ones, a couple things that are on my mind, goals in general.
Oh, do we got a Charlie soapbox?
Charlie's, I don't know, more like Charlie thoughts, memories, things I've seen that I've retained that I'm like, this is a good little quote, not movie quotes, but so I was reading at one point and someone had posted, I don't know what that they post on, but they posted on someone on any social media. So it was something where someone said, hey, all you people who go to therapy, give us your number one thing your therapist tells you so we get a bunch of free therapy.
Oh, gosh.
And
that's going to go well.
The top thing was interesting. Just that's interesting. Of just, okay.
Yeah.
Is don't focus on what it is that you need to do. Focus on the result. It's not I have to do laundry. I have to do dishes. I have to do this, right? I want clean clothes.
Right.
I want clean dishes. I want
the psychological impact of
correct, but just
at
that.
it differently. Yeah, of
if
course.
you weren't thinking of it that way, so it was just and then something that my father always told me when I was a kid was just when he would observe me doing something, going way out of my way to do something, it's like, man, if you really want something, you're going to move heaven and earth to get it done. And so it's tying those wants together. And with taxes, it's money. It's easy for the want to really be there of the, hey, you owe $5,000. Oh, no, this is not going to happen again, right? I will move heaven and earth so that this can change. So that's an easy transition of taking those, goals and plans and things like, no. What is it that you actually want? Oh, I want this to happen.
It's the catalyst, right? Like we talked about.
It's just that jump start.
Yeah.
And so, often in taxes ends up being the result. You're there doing your taxes, something happened, you're like, oh dang, I'm stuck in this rut, and now I have to want to change, right? This is not good. There are times, however, where we can catch that ahead of time, right? We work year round, right? I can't tell you the amount of times that I've heard this guy telling people, I'm here all year, please call me, right? The big financial decisions that you have going on, please reach out to, your tax advisor. We can give you an input on that, selling a rental property, pulling money out of your retirement account to pay off your house, those different things. those goals that you have set for yourself can have an impact in there. And so coming from that angle of knowing what it is that you want really just leads too easy into the planning side of things. On the taxes, it's just you create that want. The want is just too easy. Either I want this, it's gonna end up happening. Let's make sure to, hedge around that, or it's just this happened and now I want to change. And so to me, it's too beautiful a segue to go into the planning side of it, because that's where we breathe. Like, this whole thing is going to be like, at the end we do our comfort zone. This whole thing is just comfort zone. This is just a big tax appointment of okay, we did this, now we're in this, now we do this. Yeah. And so it's just a great, we've done your tax return and now we're just looking forward. What's going to happen in the next couple of years? Just easy speech at that. And so it's, you have the want, you have that piece there. And then it's just establishing those steps as this is what's going to happen. Some of the goals and planning and taxes aren't things that you have initiated the want and change. Some things just happen. You have a kid who has now gotten older and has less benefit on the tax return. You have a kid who graduated from college and won't be in a tax return anymore.
Yeah, you just lose the dependent.
Correct.
Yeah,
right.
Which you want, right? Eventually
that is the
goal.
You
want them to get their big boy or big girl job.
Correct.
And no longer be on your insurance, or no longer, cost you money and all that kind of stuff.
Correct. Or you want that promotion at work, right. Or you want that big bonus, or you're gonna start a business. I mean, those things are gonna have those impacts. And so it's not like it's this, I'm going to do this 3-step thing I heard on this podcast about my stuff. It's like, no, this is just happening anyway. What do we do about this? And make sure that we're, and so it's too easy to walk into the planning. So it's, you're sitting there, the planning is contingent on the prior two things, right? Knowing that you have a kid turning 17,
so when we talk
the numbers.
Yeah, so we talk about the prior two things. You're talking specifically about the knowing your numbers.
Correct.
And then setting goals, right?
Correct.
So once you know your numbers and you have set a goal, now you actually have to make a plan in order to attain that goal, because wanting something is not enough. Right. Now it's the catalyst, which is great, but now you actually have to structure to some extent.
Correct. How
you will achieve your goal, right? So moving into the planning side of things, like you're talking about, planning for losing dependence on your tax return or whatever, sure. There's a monetary amount affixed to that. Yep. And so you say, okay, well, then I need to adjust my withholding by this much because I'm going to lose this benefit, and I need to do it ahead of time so that I can make sure and still get the outcome that I want on my tax return.
Right. Either I accept this is going to be a dip and I accept it, or I don't accept it and I want to maintain where I have been. What do I need to do to change? Some of those things are just done for us. We just have to react to them. Mm-hmm. But the proactive side of things, right? I want to grow my business. I want to start a business. Having knowing your numbers, then the goal is already there. And then we're in the planning side of things. One of the important pieces in that is people ask, well, what's the best way to do this? What's the best way now to track my numbers, to set these goals, to look at that? And I tell everybody, not in a sarcastic voice, the best thing for you to do, the right thing, is the one that you'll actually do, right? Can I talk to this software, this app thing is just superior because it has all these extra bells and whistles? Sure. But if you'll use it for 2 days and then not do it, it's not the best thing. If what you'll actually do is go to Walmart and buy a ledger piece of paper and track all your stuff on that with a pencil, and you do that all year long, that's the best thing to do. Right. So there's no method of the right or wrong way. It's the right way to do it is just being honest with yourself of what am I actually willing to do? Because you've already established the want. Yep. And what are you actually willing to do, right?
Yeah, because if you won't keep it up, if you won't continue to do it, then you're not going to get the result that you want. So know your numbers, set goals, and then plan in a way that works towards your strengths. Yeah. So for some people, they'll use Mint, right? Mint is an app on your phone, links with your bank account, and it can give you a lot of helpful numbers. Some people want to use Excel. Some people want to use QuickBooks. There's a whole lot of different electronic options.
Sure.
Some people want to balance their checkbook, right? I still have people who balance their checkbook. And it's sad that now is more unusual, right? For people to actually pull out their checkbook and start balancing it.
Because it's a tactile thing to memory, and it works.
Yeah. And when was the last time you saw somebody write a check at the grocery store or something like that, right? It's
I write checks every week, man. I don't know what you're talking
oh
about.
gosh, okay.
I just had to order new checkbooks, so I was out.
Oh wow, okay. My wife and I have a checkbook, but it is in a place where we almost never have to grab it. And I think the last time I wrote a check was like 8 or 9 months ago. You know,
Right.
but
your HOA takes you your lawn care now, so you cheat. That's cheating.
Gotcha. That's true, actually. But anyways, the point is you and I love the point that you bring up, which is essentially, what will you actually be successful in doing? Do it that way.
Yeah.
And so, you know yourself what it is that you can be successful at doing. And so that is the route that we recommend that you try. Now, some people just want a recommendation from us. Right. Well, what do you think? What would you recommend?
I can tell you what I would do. But
yeah. In that scenario, it's just I just try and give a list of options, like I was discussing Mint or Excel or QuickBooks, or like Charlie said, a ledger, or a less formal approach. In my wife and I used Excel in order to look at our numbers initially, and once we had those initial numbers, now we take a more informal approach, right? Because we're not doing data entry every single week on our numbers. But some people really want that. And I've got clients who do that, and they know their numbers. Like, there is no question that they know their numbers, and you make better decisions when you do. And so from this angle of things, I hope you will set some goals and then make plans in order to achieve those goals. Any other thoughts on that side of things, Charlie?
Nothing super striking. No.
Okay, fantastic. Then I think we have recapped, right? Number 1, know your numbers. Number 2, set goals, achievable goals, right? Because I could set a goal.
Bite-sized goals.
Yeah, I could set a goal to win the lottery, and the reality is that's a horrible goal because I can't control whether I do or don't win.
Mind over
the
matter.
lottery.
You can do it. I believe in you. Okay.
Right. So setting achievable goals.
But on your friend, remember that too.
Did you see? I saw a picture. I don't remember what country it was. It could have been the United States, but it might have been a different country, where the guy went and picked up his lottery winnings with a mask on.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Gloves and a mask and everything. He was trying to hide everything he could about himself, so his family didn't know that he won the lottery. That made me laugh. But you got to play to win, Charlie, and I don't play. So, anyways, but the point is you have to set achievable goals. And so it's knowing your numbers, setting achievable goals, and then planning appropriately. And I mean, you try and try and try again. If at first you don't succeed, try again, right? So it's one of those scenarios where you're never going to be perfect. You just have to constantly make some level of effort, as long as you've got a catalyst in order to incentivize or really motivate you to make that change. All right, let's go ahead and move on to comfort zone then. Clark, I assume you have some questions for us today?
Yes, I've got 2 questions for you today. Can business owners deduct meals and entertainment?
Okay, I mean, that's pretty much there's always context behind this, right? But this one's actually pretty simple. When it comes to meals, the quick answer is yes.
Yeah.
Generally, there are 3 types of meals that business owners can deduct. And the first one is travel meals, right? So if you're more than 50 miles away from your tax home for the purpose of business, then generally meals that you eat are tax deductible. The second one is client meals, right? So if you're paying for meals for your employees or for your clients, wining and dining them, that kind of thing, then those meals are tax deductible. And then the third type of meal is usually networking. So now we're talking about marketing and that kind of stuff, working with strategic partnerships and the like. So generally those 3 types of meals are tax deductible. Would you agree?
Yeah. And then the other half of that is the entertainment costs, which at one point were, but with the new Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, they eliminated those. So no more, buying football tickets for, the same networking and, wining and dining type of deal. That part is out as far as the entertainment goes. So it's, if you're conducting business, doing stuff with the meals, then it absolutely can be. Entertainment was then cut out after that.
So let's just a little bit more of an in-depth explanation on this question to give you some idea of how this actually ends up working. At Molen Associates, we work a tremendous amount of hours during tax season. And so after that, oftentimes the firm will either give us time off or do something special. Every couple of years or so, it feels like they take us on a cruise, right? So we're able to bring a +1 and we go on a cruise, which is super nice and wonderful of the firm. But the cruise itself, for purposes of tax law, I think there's plenty of argument to be made that the cruise is not entertainment because we hold meetings and the like during the cruise. I think it would be pretty easy to win that the cruise is not entertainment. But the comedy show that the business pays for all of the employees to go and attend as a separate expense, that is just pure entertainment. And that comedy show would not be tax deductible from the firm, even though it's a scenario in which it's with all of the Molen Associates employees and regardless of strategic partners that are there, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. The football game tickets, that kind of stuff, like Charlie was mentioning, it's just an entertainment expense and is not tax deductible.
Right.
Would you agree?
Yeah, nothing's crazy on that. I think cruises have their own special rules, and because the IRS has to invent things when we do interesting things, and so we'll find good ways, and they're like, okay, fine, and then no, it's not fun anymore. But yeah, the not justification is the wrong word, but it's the proper interpretation. There's a reason their tax court exists, and so it's not the cleanest. I read this and this is what I do.
Right.
It's the context in which it's allowed. But yeah, so there's certain rules that are fine, certain rules that are, we apply the specific, what's the right word? Your unique circumstances.
Yeah. So it's so what I tell all of my clients is that my job is to interpret and apply the law based on their unique facts and circumstances.
That's the term I'm looking for. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so I think that gives you a good answer for number 1.
Yes, I'm glad that was an easy one because number 2 may not be so easy.
Oh, great.
Or at least not as simple. What is QBI and who does it apply for?
Next.
Yeah. You want to start us off?
So QBI was one of the ones that was introduced with the TCJA. At its core, the easiest explanation is it's a 20% deduction on your business profits, essentially. There are limitations involved in that. It doesn't apply to absolutely everybody. There's special things called specified trade or business, but at its core, that's where it starts. You then build okay, here's what it is. Can I get it? Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, no. Okay, great. But I'll start there.
Yeah. So a couple things. Charlie mentioned the TCJA. We've got to be careful using acronyms in the tax world. The government loves their acronyms, right? So we end up using them a lot. But
we used it a couple times in this podcast, but fair.
Yeah,
fair.
For sure. But the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that was passed in 2017.
Yes.
It's the most recent tax reform. And so the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act included QBI. Now we say QBI, what it really means is qualified business income. It's a QBI deduction, so qualified business income deduction. So we colloquially refer to it as QBI. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I will say about QBI is it is the best kind of deduction. So let's operate under a hypothetical for a moment that you own a business and that business is profitable. But you come to someone like me and you say, Kevin, I want to pay less tax. Okay, in order to pay less tax, you generally have to show less profit. Generally speaking, the two are directly related.
Right.
And so the question becomes, what can we depreciate more? What can you buy this year that you weren't planning on buying this year, but maybe you were planning on buying it next year, but we deliberately put it in this year so that you pay less tax this year. Those types of things. And those strategies are innumerable and complex. But generally, the question is, how can we reduce your profit? The QBI is a deduction that varies depending on your profit. The more your profit, the higher your QBI deduction. So it's the best kind of write-off, right? It's the best kind of deduction. If you are hugely profitable, you get a really large qualified business income deduction. And so it's not an expense that you're actually incurring. It's because you're more profitable.
Right.
Therefore, you get the larger deduction. The idea is when corporations have more money and pay less taxes, they have more money to hire more people.
Right.
And so there again, we've had this conversation that in the last couple of podcasts, but that the economic intent behind the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So QBI, super complicated. Charlie's a great explanation, which is essentially it's 20% of your profit. It's far more complex than that.
Right.
But essentially, it is 20% of your business profit. So if your profit is zero, your QBI is zero.
Zero, right. So where it starts coming into the limitations, we're going to go deep into it, but if you're in the high hundreds of thousands of dollars of income, good problem to have. You need to work with your tax advisor as far as where the QBI comes in for you, whether it can or can't apply. If you're not in the high hundreds of thousands of dollars of income, generally speaking, you should see the QBI pull through in your tax return, and it will just be there with how that goes. You're a self-employed contract on a business. It's all essentially the same when it comes to the taxes and that deduction that will apply.
Yeah, and I promise you we'll pivot based on some of your questions. So if you want to hear more about this or any of the other subjects we've talked about today or in previous episodes, as usual, please shoot us an email at info@molentax.com because we will structure our upcoming podcasts based on some of the feedback that you give us. So let us know. We're happy to include some more helpful information for you.
Is that enough for you? Is that a taste, or do you need more?
That's perfect. That's
Wonderful.
A good answer. Thank you.
Fantastic. Do we have question number 3, or are we limited to 2 today?
2 today.
Fantastic. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for spending some valuable time with us today. Hope we were able to bring some things to your attention and motivate you to look at your finances, look at your taxes, and look at your numbers and set goals and plan for the things that you want to change or be different or improve. From Charlie and I, thank you for joining us. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Questioning Your Sense. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to this podcast, leave us a 5-star review, and don't forget to share it with a friend. If you would like to submit a question for our review on this podcast, feel free to email us at info@molentax.com.